And we're on. Hey, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great Thursday evening or Friday if you're here down under. I see there's a good collection of people in the chat already, which is awesome. And I'm stoked to be joined by Alex today. Hey, man, how you doing?
Yeah, good.
Awesome. I'm just going to intro Alex a little bit, and we're gonna get into a bit of a deep dive around what Alex has been up to, which is super interesting. If you're an amp nerd, like I'm sure if you're listening to this stream, you will be, right? Alex is actually based here in the same city as I am. He's in Melbourne, Australia, and we got to know each other through, I guess, the mutual interest of tinkering, modding, building, designing tube amps, right? So I think it's safe to say, Alex, that through my own journey, mate, you've actually helped me on a number of occasions get out of some pretty difficult spots in terms of your expertise in all kinds of areas, right? So yeah, man, I'm always thankful for the help that you've given me over the journey.
The occasional random check this out.
Yeah, we do get definitely random chats, but as we will discover, your range of skills is really broad. You know, like you get into like woodwork and tolexine and transformers and all kinds of crazy stuff that I wouldn't dare touch. So it's pretty fascinating. I do want to talk a little bit about what happened to me on the Facebook in the Facebook world. To begin with, just so that, and I'm sure that a bunch of people that are in the Evolve DIY group, or maybe friends with the Jason, or what was the Jason Tong profile on Facebook. Yeah, so I got hacked. When was it? Thursday night? Must have been Thursday night Australia time. I feel stupid because I obviously fell into a trap, right? And I should know better, given I was 28 years in IT. You think I'd know better about this stuff, but it was a Meta admin message that came through the Head First business page. So it wasn't through, it wasn't a kind of like an email or a Facebook message or whatever. It was actually through the business site, and it looked just super legit. Well, at the time I thought it was. Obviously not. Anyway, I've been blown away by the amount of help that I've actually got. So much so that one of the guys that is a friend of the channel and has been following what I've been doing for a while is trying to help me out, and he's got connections in with Facebook. Because if this happens to, and I know since this happened to me, a bunch of people have reached out and said, yeah, the same thing happened to me, right? And of course, the difficulty here is like, what do you do about it? How do you contact this organization to do something about it? It's kind of impossible, right? So, but with some connections, hopefully, I might be able to get my old profile back. We'll see. In the meantime, I'm back on Facebook, Jason Head First. If you see a friend request from me, it's legit. It's not someone impersonating me. It's actually me. Just videos during the week, guys. You would have seen that with a little collaboration I've been doing with Simon Hosford, we released the isolated guitars track of the John Sykes Crying in the Rain. There are a couple of helpful guys on with the comments on the first release that had the back end mix that said the guitars were buried. So Simon and I dwelt on that for a few days, and then decided the best way to address that was just to release an isolated guitars track. And honestly, I kind of think it sounds better just the guitars, right? So I think as a format going forward, you might see, as a format going forward, we might see more just straight guitar mixes. We'll see. We are, like Simon and I, are pretty keen to kind of keep, releasing these as we kind of go forward every now and then. So, and if you've got any requests for particular tracks or tones or whatever, and we've got a few to work on. There's already been a few that have been posted in the group. Feel free.
You already know my favorite.
No, what would it be? Oh, I know.
For the love of God.
For the love of God. Yeah, Steve Vai. And I do have my my original flower pattern gem, so we could
Oh,
yeah, we could do something with that, I'm sure. I'm going to do a video. I haven't actually done it yet. Well, I've half shot it, but I've got a an early reissue 1987X, which was on the thumbnail for this stream, which has got some interesting history actually. So we'll see how we go today, right? But I've got it connected into the live stream, so we might have a quick listen to that amp. If we find some time for it over the next, the next little while. But I'll do I will do a more in-depth video on that, because I think it's a good example of probably what I'd describe as the classic José mod. And when people say José mod, there's obviously a whole bunch of different ones. I think Dave Friedman would probably say, well, which one? I would describe this one as the more kind of classic / vintage one. You still got a decent amount of gain, right? But there's no diodes or anything like that in this one. So it'd be good to talk about that circuit if we can. But mate, Alex, let's have a bit of a chat about what you've been up to, man. So when did you get into this, and what kind of drew you into it? Like, and when I say this, I mean, building, PCB design, circuits, all that kind of stuff.
I think it was well, I was doing my own sort of recording for a while, and I was just not getting that sort of dynamic feel from plugins and stuff like that. And I've always wanted to build my own amp, which I kind of went overboard now. From the background, and it just, but yeah, I just wanted to get a better sound out of my mixes, which after I started building, I haven't actually recorded anything else after that. So I don't know. Maybe
your I don't know if there's anyone else, just maybe someone in the comments says your video and audio is out of sync for me. I don't know if it's just at my end or
my one.
Yeah, there's a delay there. I don't know whether it's just me. If it is, we're all good. So maybe someone in the chat could let us know whether that's happening for everybody. No one's saying anything yet. Must be okay. So, but you got into PCB design, right? So when did that happen, and what drew you into that?
So, well, I wanted to build a reactive load box, and
yeah,
I got a lot of help from Gary, who's one of your mates, and so like that's how the Shreddy was sort of born, as it was a Sir reactive load box, and with Eddie's help, so sort of just amalgamated the two names together to make the Shreddy. But yeah, that was basically the start of it, and then trying to. I was trying to. It was very weird how I was doing it, but I didn't use like actual software. I was sort of like converting it into vectors and vector images basically, and then the amount of issues that I was getting, when I was getting it fabbed, it was just like, nah, I've got to.
So hang on. So you were sending fabrication files to a PCB house using just a vector drawing program. Wow.
Yeah, basically Paint Shop.
Wow. That's amazing, man. That's incredible.
It was, it wasn't my finest moment. But
oh no, but that's but man, that's what draws you into it, right? I mean, I don't know if I've told the story about how I got into it, right? And I know I've told you, which is that, gee, I started hand etching in my own, bath of chemicals, right? Like, well, not like a ice cream container, more like it, where you would buy, copper PCB from the local, hobby electronics store, and print a mask on it, basically, right? And then hand etch it. So the very first LND 150 loops that I did for myself, right, were done like that. And then I was like, it was time to get serious about this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It was pretty much a very similar thing. I used the Coles magazines with my laser jet, and basically like heat transfer from the Coles magazine onto the board, and it's messy, and you can never get like a really clear image either when you do that transfer sort of thing. So I was like, whoever does this stuff at home they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're missing.
Well, I think that, and again, I've told the story too, right? Because there was a mentor of mine, Don Kohinga, and if you're listening to this, Don, either live or after, I'll always give you a shout out, brother. Don's the guy here that was kind of mentored me in the early years and got me into PCB design. He was the one that said, dude, you could totally do this. He saw the crazy things I was trying to do with my bath of ice cream container full of chemicals. He said, man, you could totally get into this, right? And kind of never look back from that.
Would you imagine doing the altar in the bathtub?
No.
Nope.
Yes. Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? No, these were, I didn't go beyond a basic effects loop at that point. So, but that was the actual first PCB that I did that, went to a fabrication house and actually got done properly, was that loop board. It took forever to do the first one, of course, because you're going up the learning curve, but then you're up and running. So that's that reactive load PCB that you've got. I'm going to drop your website into the chat. So if anyone hasn't checked out Alex's stuff, let me just see if that's come through. Yeah, so I've just dropped it in the chat, guys. So that's Sirius amplification. That's Alex's stuff, right? So a bit like the Evolve DIY store.
Yeah, you can.
There is, are you going to grab it? There's a range of kind of DIY products that Alex has got that you can grab, right? And so this one here that he's got, well, tell us about it, man.
Yeah, so it's basically it's based off the version 1 of the SLO reactive load. So before, like, he was using the impulse responses or the Pangea CP16 module. So I used basically a bridging transformer to isolate the signal with the inductors that I'm using on this. And yeah,
is that on the output so that you've got like there's ground isolation?
Yeah.
Cool.
And with the with a lot of these the footprints especially, these are all like modified. Well, not even, these are all custom PCB footprints that I made for these because there was nothing else out there, and plus I was new to the Altium scene. So basically I basically designed all the footprints myself, and then found out that there was like places like Snap EDA and stuff like that, and that could make your life easier. But I always do the hard thing first, and then go, oh, there's an easier way. Okay, cool, do that.
So what's the other stuff that you've kind of developed and you've got in the store there at the moment?
So I've done. So I've got the loop as well. I'll bet.
Yeah, the original Stephen Miller design loop. I call it the industry standard.
The Zenas, like, because Jed always like told us like, you don't need the fucking Zenas, get them off. I'm like, all right, fine.
For anyone who doesn't know who Jed is, and I'm sure some people in the stream do, and others don't. So Jed is he's awesome. Jed founded and runs the SLO Clone Forum, Slow Clone Forums, which for many of us, like, amp nerds that have gone right down the rabbit hole, is it's still the place, right? Probably not as active as it used to be, with a lot of these kind of Facebook groups and so on have popped up, not least of which the one that Alex runs and the one that I run, but still is just such an amazing resource and with a great history too. So Jed was giving you some tips on that loop, was he?
Yeah. Well, when I was talking to him in passing, and he goes, I'm like, oh yeah, I just did this loop, and he goes, what the fuck? Get the Zenas off, mate. You don't need them. I'm like, why? Everyone else is doing it. It's like, read the data sheet, and that's one thing like I now do like almost religiously, is read the data sheet for every single component, which has helped like broaden my learning, I guess, as well. And it's like, the LND 150's got built-in gate ESD gate protection, so you don't actually need Zenas. I'm like, oh, cool.
Well, that's interesting. So I just repaired a modded JMP that was modded in Europe, and it had a Tubetown loop in it, which is the LND 150 base loop. It's the same loop, but I noticed on the board, I never really looked at it. It's got that Zena protection on both stages, Alex. So over the top.
It doesn't sound the same.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It's very tone sucking.
Right. Interesting. So mate, let's talk a bit about, like kind of in terms of the sound. So you mentioned it in this chat, right, that you got into tinkering. I think a lot of us do, right, because you're trying to get different sounds, or you're trying to extract sounds out of gear that you can't find. What are those sounds, right? If you were to kind of talk about, your favorite guitar sounds or players or tones, or even,
I guess Alice in Chains
cool
stuff. I'm a huge fan of Deftones as well, but I've got a lot of, because like growing up around my dad, who's been in the industry since he was 17 as well. When he migrated from England. There was and he also stayed in the same hostel as Angus Young and all those guys. I think even my uncle had a punch on with the older brother, which is cool. But so growing up, I got a lot of influence from my dad, who listened to pretty much all the greatest, like Gary Moore, heaps of Neil Young, Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler, all that stuff. And then my mum was a big hippie, so she used to listen to Cat Stevens like all the time. So I grew up basically around 60s music, like a broad range, 60s and 70s stuff. And yeah, I guess that's why it's sort of like I do gravitate toward a lot of that slow blues stuff, but whenever I like do a quick like video clip, it's literally just, you know, just heavy, but it's never I guess I like more the, you know, the slow sort of stuff like that.
So kind of like more kind of rock tones rather than metal tones, of, you know, I guess, to summarize. I mean, Alice in Chains is pretty heavy, but I wouldn't call it, I mean, you know, Jerry's tone is still, to me, it's a gained up rock tone. It's not a chainsaw metal kind of tone.
But I opened for I think they're a Christian death metal group, Mortification.
Okay.
When I was 14, I think.
Right.
So when we played, it's like, oh, we're opening for these guys, and they're just like another genre. We're basically like grunge sort of stuff, and yeah, this was years and years ago. Obviously, I've got grey hair now. But yeah, it was a fun time though. But yeah, it was the first time I actually saw like a live show of any type of like metal, and then just got hooked.
Yeah. So with your amps, man. So are you doing like, in terms of the builds that you're doing, which I will say to everyone on the stream, right? When Alex builds, he does it all, right? You build the head cab, you Tolex it, right? I mean, you chassis in a metal fab shop, right? So I understand that. You've wound your own.
I do bend some, but yeah, it's nothing beats a laser.
Yeah,
you know, a laser cut chassis. Like, it's
sure. Yeah, this is it, right?
So
I'll let you off for that, right? I'll let you off. It's okay. It's okay to outsource your chassis.
Definitely.
Yeah, but so are you like? Would you do? Well, just talk about like custom builds versus production amps that someone could just kind of buy ready done. Are you doing both, one or the other?
So at the moment, well, I just finished an amp. It's a guy messaged me and goes, "Hey, can you build me a Mad Amp GT120?"
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. This is the green machine, yeah, that thing.
Yeah, and I'm like, what is that?
Yeah,
I didn't even.
I don't know. What is it?
And then, I didn't know, but the Mad Amp was basically before Orange. They designed Orange, I think. Someone else will know more of the history than I will.
Okay. See, I'm not aware of this, right? So I'm keen to hear.
So yeah, it's a different phase inverter. Everything's different, really. And it's just got the preamp is just real weird. Like, it's not my cup of tea. I'm much into the slow sound, but yeah, trying to find information on it, accurate information, and still couldn't find it. So I just thought, I'll just design something up, you know, close, you know, to get that inspiration, sort of how it sounds, but just a little bit different. Even the construction was a bit different as well, because as a lot of people were pointing out, that it was very slow construction, sort of esque. But to me, I just like using the copper bus wire.
Yeah, right. I've just got just pause you for a second. Ben's saying the video is way out of sync. So, guys, if you give us a bit more information on that, is that both Alex and I? Is it just Alex? Because we can, you know, if we have to rejoin the stream or whatever, we can do that, right? And see if it fixes it. So yeah, let us know. Just while you're on that topic, I'll just bring this up. Well, someone's saying not having issues here. Okay, cool. So it's obviously just some, including me, but that's okay. We can continue. So we're all good. Okay, let's talk about this amp, man. So, and I know, guys, there's a whole bunch of other comments and questions in the chat, so we will get to this, right? I just want to bring these up because they're right on the topic that we're talking about right now. So, low quality guitar videos sounds like my YouTube channel, man.
Sounds like mine.
yeah, you'll be in a battle to see who wins that award, man. Low quality guitar video award. Madam used to make amps for the Orange shop / storefront. Okay. And then, as legend has it, Orange wanted to go more the somewhat mass production route, and Madam wanted to stay smaller, so they split. Okay, interesting. Yeah, cool. Well, there you go. I didn't know that. I was a bit like you, man, because you said when someone asked you to build one of these, you said, "What's that?" I was the same.
Yeah, and so I tried to find, and as you're aware, like when you're designing something from scratch, you got to figure out like how you're going to do it. Do you go out and get someone else's sort of like thing just to speed up the whole process, or you know, which is basically like a clone, or do you just go out and go, I'll just make it myself? And that's I tried to contact a few people. There was a guy in US, but he never responded, never returned my email until I finished the actual build. And I'm like, you're a bit late there. So I just went, screw it, I'll just make my own board and face plates and chassis, and then I made the output transformer and everything. Because I've made quite a few now, so it wasn't too hard to go, I'll just a couple of turns here and there and make it. But I guess the biggest part of that was trying to design and build an amp within a certain time frame. And I designed it and PC fab everything all in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So, but I had to wait 7 weeks or 6 weeks for Tubetown to send me the Tolex, which was don't ever get green basket weave if you're in Australia. It is the hardest thing to get, especially from Mojo Tone, which is like $150 for shipping. And so, but
so the green was by request, yeah. So
literally by request. And you know, and the schematics that I saw was like they were actually wrong. And the first time I turned it on and everything, it was like, this sounds thin, and you know, well, like I said before, it's not my cup of tea. But yeah, I tweaked it a little bit just to get it sounding like a similar sound to what I was hearing on YouTube. And yeah, the guy that requested it, so Jake was his name. So I was actually named after him. So without giving too much away, his last name was Carpenter. So yeah, he loved it, and he said, and yeah, he was giving me updates just recently about it too. So
yeah, he's got the amp now. He's a happy customer.
Yeah, it was a fun build, and yeah, and I'm currently doing another one, but another custom one. So yeah, that's and that's completely different to the green one as well. But yeah, literally, I was happy with the fact that I was able to completely design this thing from ground up within 3 weeks. It was a fair effort, especially because I didn't even know if this thing was going to power up properly. So yeah, that was fun.
Always the way, man. I had a I'm gonna come back. I want to get to a few of these comments in the chat, right, and then we'll come back. I want to talk about transformers, particularly output transformers with you, right? Because I think given that you've been down this rabbit hole, right, I think you'll have some interesting insights for people. But I will say, just on before I go to the comments, I want to give you everyone a quick. I'm building an amp right now, right? It's a it's a new circuit. It's a collaboration that I've been doing with Shay, and we'll, I think I've teased it a couple of times, right? I think Shay has as well. We'll talk more about this in the coming weeks. But brand new output transformer, wired it in, right? Got the amp powered up yesterday for the first time. Sounds like crap. I was like,
the output transformer.
Yeah. Check the color codes on all the wiring. All good. I'd used the same OT once before. Actually in the Jim Root Alpha 50, right? The same one. Or the same model. I know it works. I know it sounds great. This one, well, of course I'm checking my phase inverter, I'm checking everything in the amp, right? Trying to figure out what the hell. And I've used this. It's a new board that I've designed, but I've used it once. It's in the Jim Root amp. So I know the board works. And I kind of was dwelling on it overnight, and I actually was chatting to Shay just before I came on the stream, right? And we were like going, I said, I wonder whether the primary, they've screwed up the colors on the wiring of the primary on the output transformer. So I get the multimeter out, right, and check it, and just check the DC resistances of the primary. And sure enough,
what was it?
Way out? So, I figured out, right, because you got if you think about, and guys, we do go down the rabbit hole on this stream, right? So you bear with us. Primary side of an output transformer, right? Center tapped, 2 outer taps or anodes, if you want to call it that.
Was it 50 watt?
It's a 50 watt OT.
So 40 ohm? Yeah,
well, it was like measuring about 38 from the outside tap to center. Now, this is color coded white center tap, red and brown on the outer. Okay. Now, the white and the red were reversed. So the red in this actual OT that the red is the center tap and the white was the outer tap, right? So in other words, when I wired it in, just following the color codes on the transformer, it was wired incorrectly. And I can tell you that when you do that, it doesn't sound very good at all.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a lesson. It was a bit of a lesson. I built truckloads of amps, right? And I just followed the color codes on the transformers, And then obviously when I have my own power up procedure, so with the power transformer, I'm really careful with that. But with an OT, I kind of genuinely follow the color coding, thinking that that's going to be okay.
For power transformer, I just cowboy it, connect it straight to mains.
Oh, I don't. I use a Variac on a new build and bring it up gently. But I just like
gonna blow.
Like it was a bit of a reminder to, do your own checks on the stuff. Right, we've got to remember that these transformers, particularly, they're made on winding machines, but by humans. And people make mistakes, right? And so whoever wound this transformer used the wrong color. Used the wrong colors when they wound the primary. So,
definitely.
It was a good lesson. So, I'm just going to go to a few comments in the chat here, guys, and say hi to a few people. Terry wants to hear this José mod that I've done. Well, I didn't say it was already done. Let's just say I modified it. I think I made it better. I tried to. Hey, Mark. Yeah. The Kelly 50. So that is a type of José mod. We will spend some time talking about this, I'm sure, right? Because the amp that I've got here that we'll see if we can play some sounds through the stream is I call it the kind of more traditional vintage José. So it's like, if anyone watches Pete Thorne's channel, I'm sure heaps of people here do, the Mick Mars Richard Fortis José that he featured on the channel. It's more like that circuit. So there's no José master volume with diodes and all that kind of stuff in this amp, but I reckon it sounds pretty ripping. Mark says, how's the weather there? Yeah, Alabama. Well, we're heading into summer. I know that probably sounds weird.
Especially with all the rain.
Yeah, well, people in the normal house. It has been quite wet, but we're into a very nice period next few days. Today's going to be 29 Celsius. I have no idea what that is in Fahrenheit. If someone can do the conversion.
29.
But yeah, no, it's good. It's good here. It's good here at the moment.
Probably like around 80 or 90 Fahrenheit, maybe.
Yeah, sounds right. And it's just blue sky and still. It's just like, yeah, it's like a taste of what's to come. Hopefully our summer is not too bad, right? Because there is a lot of worry about bushfires in Australia this season. Yeah, we've got a good collection of people from around the world here. Rob, hey man. Thanks for sending me that email with those clips. It was really interesting. Yeah, so these are all kind of comments that, hey guys, Hoss is here. Hey man. Yeah, it's more like about 30 minutes, I reckon, depending on the traffic, but still not that far away.
Yeah, it's like 10 kilometers, but it's like, depending on the traffic, it's probably like an hour.
Now let's get a question in before I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about transformers, man. But we've got a question here, so let's tackle it. Recommendations for biasing grid biased amps. I think you mean fixed biased amps with or without the expense of bias probe. Any resources?
Mono resistance.
Yeah. So there, in terms of resources, right? There is one of the best sites. I'm going to put it in the chat for anyone who doesn't know it. Is Rob Rubinetti's website, which is kind of, when you look at it, you'll go, wow, that's pretty vintage kind of website. It's old school, like kind of looks like, late 90s, early 2000s kind of, vintage.
Like I would have converted that to like a WordPress site or something.
I've just stuck it in the chat, guys. That website is one of the best you'll find in terms of just information about tube amps, how they work, troubleshooting guides, all kinds of things. Right? Yeah, it's really awesome. That dude knows his stuff, right? He's got bias calculators up there that you can punch your numbers in, and it'll tell you the result and all the rest of it. But he's got also, I'm pretty sure in there, he's got details of range of methods that you can use where you don't have a bias probe. So Alex mentioned one of them. You can buy low tolerance 1 ohm resistors, and so like a 1% tolerance 1 ohm resistor, and you'll see this in a lot of amps where you've got a bias check capability. So some amplifiers will have a bias check inside where you can just put your meter, digital multimeter, onto millivolts, and you can, with the 1 ohm resistor, you're measuring the voltage drop across that resistor, and because it's 1 ohm resistor, the voltage that you measure will equal the current, and so you can get a milliamps, because when you measure bias, you're actually measuring current, not voltage. But with a 1 ohm,
sure you remove the ground cable from that cathode when you install those resistors too. Otherwise, it will be pointless.
Yeah, so you can put it, if you do that, this is a kind of a mod that you can do. If it's a PCB based amp, you probably can't. But if it's if you've got if you've got chassis mounted sockets here, power tubes, you can, if you have a look at pins 1 and 8, they're normally tied together and then set straight to the chassis, to ground. You can
interrupt. 3 for Novel.
Huh?
Or 3 for Novel. I think it's 3.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of just normal octals, like a EL34 6v6 kind of setup. Yeah, if you got 84s or whatever, then yeah. So you can measure, if you do that right and put those 1 ohm resistors in, then you can really easily measure bias, and it's safe as well because you're not actually dealing with any kind of high voltage. The other way you can do it is you can measure the voltage drop across the primary of the output transformer at idle, and I think that is detailed on Rob Rubinetti's website. It's more dangerous, right? And
the shunt method.
Yeah, and if you don't know what you're doing, I wouldn't recommend it. Spend $30 on one of those the bias probe, right? Where it's not even, it's just a socket that interrupts, and it has 2 banana leads on it, and then you plug those into your multimeter. It's not expensive, right? And it's the safest way.
You could even make one.
You could make one. You should make a DIY kit for it, man.
I've got something.
I know you will, right? It's going to happen. So someone's working on a SLO chassis as we speak. Yeah, man, that's the way, man. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I've got one laying around somewhere.
Yeah. Let's talk about, oh, here we go. I'm going to address this first. Jacob, hey, brother. Superior Perth Coffee, right? So this is not going to go away, is it? So I watch bloody Uncle Leon Todd and Troy Nababan, who I'm sure you guys know who Leon is, right? Watch Leon's channel, the Gear Podcast, on a weekly basis. So those two gentlemen were jumped on the stream last week, and we're trying to position.
Melbourne coffee is just better.
Yeah, well, basically, trying to put a position forward that Perth coffee was better than coffee, which is clearly not true. Anyway, if you watch the latest Gear Podcast episode, they start the episode by trying to put that position forward again and giving me some shit about it, which is cool. Fine. Not true though. Yeah, not true. So let's talk about yeah, man, he's still going on about it. Look at this. Yeah. It's actually superior Perth coffee. Good one, man. I love it. This is obviously Alex's website, right? I'll just throw it up there again. So make sure everyone checks it out. We do have another question coming up here, but before we get to that, let's jump back to talking about transformers, man. Let's start with why. As in, why did you?
I painfully put myself through all this process.
Why did you get into winding, man? Like, that's super fascinating to me.
I don't know. Well, I do know it was like at the time I was like my first ever transformer I wound, it was a valve state 80 V power transformer, and so it's a EI 96 laminations, but I think it was the M26 lambs and not the M6. And yeah, it doesn't matter.
So what's the, just so people can, like, the uninformed, what does that, when you talk about M25, M6 and all that, what does that mean?
The old vintage, like the diagonal that I wound for you a while back, the one that had that burnt smell. So they've got the vintage lambs are, well, they're sort of got a different sort of they're not as, in my opinion, they're not as good as the M6s. So when you look at like a GOSS, which is grain oriented stainless steel, for example.
So this is in the people can picture a transformer. It's all the laminations, the metal. Tum, 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 tum. It's the quality of this.
The eyes.
The type of steel.
Yeah. So you've got you got grain oriented stainless steel. You've got just grain oriented steel.
Right.
And you've got a whole heap. Well, the vintage stuff is very, very, very bad to like rewind the transformers. You can do it, obviously. I did that D2968 or 2698 from that Marshall, I think it was. So you can do it, but when I did that transformer, especially because of all the varnish that was being used in that time, it's very toxic. And after finishing it, I didn't actually tell you back then, but I had chemical burns all through my hands, and I was like, wow. It'll just go away.
Shit.
She'll be right, mate. But yeah, like for about 2 weeks, I was like, I couldn't even put it into like salt water or anything like that. It was like,
oh man, no way.
Yeah, it's all in the it's all a learning experience. So I'll know not to do that again. But yeah, so with the what were we talking about?
So like what we're talking about. Well, you're talking about the difference between M25, M6, kind of like.
Yeah, it's left my brain.
What about, so why? Actually, no. I'll take a different take with this. Right? What? People talk a lot about the magic of output transformers. I mean, you read all the forums, right? And your guitar friends talk about this stuff, right? So people who kind of get into, particularly into boutique amps, and they talk about, like the myth or the quality of the old Marshall output transformers. I'm really just focusing on OTs here, right? Forget about power transformers for the meantime.
Power transformers are all, OTs, there is a little bit of magic involved with
it. Yeah. So what is let's talk about that, right? What are the, people talk about a diagonal wind and this and that, like what does all that mean,
I'd avoid a diagonal and a Drake. But the way they did the actual layers on those transformers. So I do it very, very much similar to like how the Drake was wound. And that's, I reverse the primary. So, well, I've got, well, this anyway here. So when I'm winding, and now I do it, I don't have a CNC or anything like that. I literally hand wind it, and I turn it by hand just to use the counter, because if I wind it to, you know, more than like one turn an hour, the thing will literally like loop over itself, and it'll be extremely messy and scattered winding. And when you're using a small bobbin with the smaller laminations, you get a lot of, you lose a lot of space really quickly. So so when I'm winding and I'm turning it, so I do one layer, then crepe paper and a Captain tape, which is a very high temp tape, so it doesn't, you know, catch on fire, at least when you're playing, you know, full cranks and your output transformer blows up for whatever reason. It won't do that with a Captain tape. But, you know, Drakes and Dagnalls, they used to use masking tape, which is still okay.
Right.
But there is like a little bit of isolation and stuff with that. But it doesn't compete with, you know, the Captain tape and stuff. But yeah, so I wind one whole layer all the way, and I split the primary and the secondary. So I do the secondary layer first. So always make the secondary layer buried underneath the primary.
Okay.
So that also helps with the noise interference and everything from the transformer, and it also helps it when, you know, when you're rotating on the chassis. For example, the headphone text, like it doesn't interfere as much when you bury the windings underneath the primary. And but the trick that I found with the Drakes and the Dagnall transformers especially is they actually turned the bobbin in reverse and then wound normally. So it was almost like a reverse winding from the secondary. And I think that's, and from all the ones that I've actually experimented with, that was the best sounding one that I got. And another one that I bought, like I think it was a Hammond or something like that. It had, and I did a side-by-side test on my PV Bandit actually, and yeah, it was a completely different sound as well, just by the way that the layers are on the bobbin. But in terms of transformers especially, you know, iron is iron, copper is copper.
Yeah.
But yeah, the big thing was obviously the way the winds are, how many turns on the bobbin as well.
Yep. This thing about what you said there about the secondaries underneath the primary are at the top.
Buried,
that's news to me, right? But when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, like that makes complete sense, right? Where did you find, like, in terms of resources that are out there for this stuff, anyone who wants to kind of go down this rabbit hole? And I see that I was just flicking through the chat here, and Murray Guitar Pickup says, you're giving me ideas. I might have a crack at winding a transformer. Time to dive into another rabbit hole. Do it, man. Resources for learning about this stuff? Where do you go? Is there anything like how did you kind of get into this?
There is a lot. So I've got a lot of in my my Google Drive that I've got accessible for everyone. I've got a lot of information that I got from Bud Irvin. I don't even know how to pronounce his name correctly either. So could be Bud Irvine.
Okay.
Who used to be the guy from the original Onetics Transformers guy.
Oh yeah. Those are good. Those are good Transformers. Yeah. Expensive.
So like his designs with for example, with the Mackie Transformers and stuff, it's just, I would call it the standard, like that everyone should just use that as the standard, and so like even layer technique, isolation, everything it's just, there's a lot of information there. But I think I got a lot of information from our good mate Lindsay Wallace.
Oh yeah,
who he actually gave me the tip about burying the wines to fix the interference. So yeah, kudos where kudos is due. Like Lindsay Wallace has been like probably one of the biggest in terms of all the Transformer deep dives that I've done. It's probably thanks or like his fault. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And have you ever kind of dismantled a Drake or a Dagnall to kind of like see that it's that how you were winding is similar or the same, or like?
Yeah. Every time I find one, I have a look at it, and I guess you would say I would destroy the way they did it just to document how they did it.
It's all in the name of science, man.
It's like, $400 doesn't matter.
It's got to be a few. Yeah, you got to. What is the L? You got to crack a few eggs to make an omelette, whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
I will remember. So I will mention this, right? So I had a 2203X reissue Marshall, obviously 100 watt, and it came in for repair. And no, I got it. That's right. I got it in a kind of a part trade, and it came in as a kind of not working. So I thought, I can fix this thing. Only to discover that when you turn the amp on, you got that burning smell. Yeah, that smells like, oh my God, turn it off. Closer inspection, I could see that the something had been shorted in one of the secondary winds. Anyway, I pulled the power transformer off this amp, gave it to Alex, and he gave it back to me completely rewound. And not only that, but I asked him, I said, man, can you put a like a 2 amp 15 volt AC secondary on it as well, so I can do like 12 volt DC heaters and stuff and other things, get some.
I think I gave you a 5 amp.
I can't remember. Well, I've still got that amp, right? And it's working beautifully, right? Powered it up, gently with the variac. Not that I didn't trust your winding, but that's what I do.
I wouldn't
have. Flick the switch, man. I see Scotty's in the chat, right? Scotty, flick the switch, man. Where is he? Yeah, there he is. Hey, mate. Anyone who hasn't seen Scott's videos that he's posted in the Evolve DIY group, you got to watch them, mate. when he powers on his build for the first time, it's great. But man, that PT is awesome. It like not only did you completely rewound it, but all the voltages came back and they were spot on. So like the high voltage secondaries, the bias tap, obviously the heaters, but came with a 15 volt.
It would have been quieter too.
Yeah, probably. Well, I didn't. It's hard to know because I never got to hear the amp before. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. The diagonals were really like loose and just.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. We've got a question here. We'll get to some questions. Why in amp builds you don't see people using metal films? Reasons. There's a few.
That's all I use.
Yeah, there's quite a few that use metal film. So, like all the Wizards are all metal film with orange drop caps, which is an interesting combination. The SLO uses the CCF 60s, they're metal film, aren't they, Alex?
Mm-hmm. Vichet.
Yeah. Yeah, the Vichet, yeah. So, look, they do. I think there's like, there's a bit of kind of like, when you think about the DNA of some of these amps, where do they go back to? So, generally speaking, there's obviously not a blanket rule, but generally speaking, when you see amps that have kind of got clear linkage back to, Marshall DNA or whatever, they'll tend to use the same type of kind of components more generally. Because
guitarists are superstitious as well.
They are, and some of the stuff is chosen because of that, rather than necessarily one sounds better than the other. I don't know.
Oh, they had carbon. I'm going to use carbon only carbon.
Yeah. There's magic in the carbon comps, but probably not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use metal film in all of my builds.
Oh, you do? Okay. Now, is there a, to help answer that question, was there a particular reason you went with metal film?
I like blue.
Exactly.
That's blue against a white PCB. It just looks magic. I mean, you don't get the same reaction when you use carbon film or wire wounds. Even is a blue. You're like, oh.
Looks good. Yeah. Well, this is it, right? It's important.
There's also other things too. Like they are quieter. Like I'd say, apart from wire wounds being the quietest, metal film's just underneath in terms of quiet resistors. So that's why I use them.
It's got to look good on the inside as well as the outside, man.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Pedro says, "Hey Jason, first time catching you live." Well, man, I'm glad you're here. What's your opinion on using electrolytic caps or metal film caps as cathode bypass caps? Okay. Someone asked, and maybe it was you, I can't remember. Someone asked this question or a very similar question in the DIY group during the week, and I think
film caps.
Yeah, well, the question was, because you chimed in too, you helped answer this. The question was, so if you think about, if you think of classic Marshall circuit, whether it's a super lead or a 2203, 2204, the cathode bypass cap on V2A, sometimes referred to as the fat cap, it's common to see a 0.68 microfarad there, and then you could choose, right? You could use an electro cap or a poly or whatever. But then it's also common to see a bypass cap there that's 22 microfarad, 330 microfarad even, 220, some really big values, right? And at that point, you're going to have to use electro because the size of the capacitor that will be required, right? You'll have to crane the thing in. It'll be so bloody big. So there's definitely limitations around, size constraints and so on that, where it's kind of becomes unreasonable to try and do this. And you'll see this in some of the very old Marshalls that, came with the original mustards in them, and you see like a 0.68 bypass cap up on V1, and it's massive. right? Compared to, you know, 0.022 or 0.0022 microfarad, you know, so as soon as you're starting to get into those values. So, you know, whether there's, you know, objectively different sounds, you know, probably a little bit, but I think from my experience in looking at amps that have come in, and of course where I've chosen different values as well, there's always a consideration of how big is this thing? Is it actually reasonable to be able to use it? And what's the cost of the part as well, obviously.
I found it works hand in hand with especially with the plate resistors as well. Like that, changing values of that can make the circuit work with the cathode caps like dramatically. And that's what I found anyway with all the circuits I've used. You know.
Yeah, cool. Emmanuel says, "Hi mates, do you ever feel tired of amps? Most similarly designed amps sound almost the same through the same speakers. Do you ever feel like making a radical design because of it?" Yeah, interesting. Look,
how radical?
Yeah, well, you know, like one way to interpret this question is what makes an amp sound good. Now that's, you know, that's arguably a subjective, you know, question as well, right? Because what's good for someone is not good for someone else. But I do believe, I have this very firm belief that the definition of good is informed by the music that you listen to, especially when you were younger, you know. So when I know this from my own personal experience, right? When I think of what's a good sound or, you know, good tone of an amp, I know it's informed by all the stuff that I listened to in my teenage years, which, you know, I was a teenager in the 80s, you know, and so you know, right? You know what I was listening to. I don't need to list the bands. It's probably pretty obvious. And the guitar players, you know. And then so like that for me is like when I'm kind of sitting there tinkering with the circuit and going like, how do I want this to sound? It's still underpinned by that. And I mean, I've looked at truckloads of amps that have come in, you know, modded stuff, obviously production amps and so on. And there are different flavors. And I'm thinking about, you know, particularly stuff that's in that kind of underpinned with the kind of Marshall DNA. And when I say Marshall DNA, I mean even the, you know, the Bogners of the world and so on, which, you know, the SLOs even, they all kind of came.
Oh man.
They all we're not going to talk about that bloody line 6 thing. But they all come from a similar place or the same place ultimately. So do I ever feel like making a radical design because of it? Well, I don't want to stray too far. I want to have something that is, you know, might have a bit of a signature sound to it or a signature feel, because feel is really important for a player as well, not just the sound. But I still want it to kind of, I want people to think when they play one of my amps, I want them to, that it makes them feel like, oh yeah, this is the, you know, this is the essence of the stuff that I love, you know, not something like, wow, this sounds like something from Mars. Yeah.
I think the radical design elements that I would probably focus on is like keeping the circuit like dead quiet. And using like modern grounding techniques, like
100%.
Like our good old mate Lyle.
Yeah.
With his like invaluable modern grounding, you know, video clips and stuff. Is like
I say it every time, right? That's still the best grounding tutorial video on the internet.
100%.
Yeah. And I like it because not just because Lyle shows practically how to do it, but he gets the pen and paper out and goes through some theory, which is
and he's also got a great, like, you know, radio voice. So
yeah, 100%. Luke says, Jason, you should do an episode on the Silver Jubilee. Okay, man, this is interesting. Maybe go over the circuit and how, if at all, it relates to José modded amps. It's a really interesting topic, not least of which is because the Wizard lineup, well, some of them anyway, not the whole Wizard lineup, but the Wizard lineup has got DNA links back to the Jubilee, right? And I mean, you guys know, if anyone's followed me for a long time will know that I cut my teeth in the very early years by, playing around with that Wizard circuit, or a few of them. And man, they sound ripping, and they are based on that Jubilee. And that Jubilee circuit is not like nothing else. Like it's not just a small evolution of what preceded it at Marshall. It's radically different in many different ways. And yeah. And look, the other thing that is interesting at the moment, just in terms of timing of this question, is my good buddy and business partner Shay at Monomyth Amps in Indiana. And shout out to Shay if you're listening, brother. He posted on his Instagram, and we talked about it when he was on the stream with Dave. Was it last week? No, week before. It was Lyle last week, wasn't it? That he'd modded a Jubilee. And one of the Jubilees, he's done a bunch of them now, right? And one of them that he's modded, he bought in from Europe. So I think he said this on the stream 2 weeks ago. It's hardwired at 240 or 230 volts, and those power transformers can't be, single primary, as I understand it. So that amp is coming here for me to check out. So I'll feature it on the channel, and then it'll be put up for sale.
He needs to get the same type of variator that we've got, so you can go like 260 volts. Our wall voltage about 260.
If you get 260 at yours.
252.
That's crazy, man.
That's why I've got the variator.
That is crazy. Yeah. So look, this will be this will be interesting, right? The Jubilee will be an interesting amp and circuit to kind of to dive into, and so I'll take your comment on board here, and particularly with this amp from Shay coming down. And mate, I'm certainly not going to kind of open up the guts of it and talk about what Shay's mod's all about, but we can have a listen to it. And I should get myself a stock tube so we can actually
the plate fed tone stack is it's much different to all the other Marshalls, really.
100%, man. It's so different, and it's also, I think, because it's so different, it's also been an amp that, generally speaking, modders have avoided.
Especially with the diode clipping with the LEDs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like without that, it actually sounds really bright and I know what's the word where you
right
honky. But with the clipping in there, it's with the plate fed tone stack. It's just throwing up the volume. It sounds really good.
And because the tone stack in the Jubilee, anyone kind of pulls out a schematic and has a quick look at it and compares it to a 1959 Super Lead, you see the tone stack is completely different in the way it's wired. And one of the things that, and again, anyone who's played with this or maybe owned one of the things that was very common back in the day was to mod JMP Marshalls, and rather than have 3 gain stage cathode follower, right? Because you've got 4 triodes to play with. You think of a standard Marshall, you've got 3 preamp tubes, right? One's the V3 is the phase inverter, so you can't touch that. You've got 2 tubes to play with. Therefore, you've got 4 triodes, 2 triodes in each tube. And in a stock Marshall back then, and I'm thinking, 2203 and 1959, you've got 3 gain stages and a cathode follower. And that's the classic Marshall sound. So one of the mods that people would do without Mark Cameron and others, right? You could do it without drilling a hole and having to insert another preamp tube, is to convert the cathode follower into another regular gain stage. So you've got 4 gain stages, each one cascading into the next. Once you're at that level, you can get a shit ton of gain out of that amp. But you're now, as Alex said, right, you're now driving the EQ straight from the plate of the 4th gain stage, and it does weird things. It's it'll get all kind of honky and kind of toothy and a bit kind of like, man, that sounds kind of, it's almost, I find it a bit fatiguing. Yeah. So you've got to do other things to kind of compensate for that, to kind of bring it under control again, because it does get, I mean, anyone who's played with it will know, right? A friend of mine who's, a great builder and modder in the US contacted me a few months ago, and he was playing with this probably for the first time, and, went to a 4-stage plate fed, and he said, man, it's just so bloody honky in the mids. And I was like, yeah, you've got to
put the Jubilee clipping in it.
Well, yeah, like, and the Jube tone stack, right? So, it's pretty cool. So we've got another, just demystify the Jubilee. Just in case I look at this, well, I am. Right? Is there any way to replace the LED diodes for tube diodes?
Tube diodes?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
GC34.
Yeah, I know. Like, do you mean like a tube rectifier, which is basically diodes, right? So, I'm not too sure why you'd
Nixie tubes.
Yeah. Emmanuel goes on to say, by the way, Jason, I noticed your amps can do modern sounds very well. Do you have a favorite modern band that inspired your tones in your head? Well, it's Slipknot now.
How modern?
Look, the channel. So that's if you think about the Alta, channel 2. I built that amp around channel 2. That's kind of like, that's where I went, and as soon I focused in on that, and I thought that if I could get that where I wanted it to be, then I knew that I could build around it, and I could go, one way cleaner, and I could go one way more gain. And that channel 2 is, certainly based around wanting to be able to extract the stock and modded Marshall style tones that are in my head. So, and I've never really been into real super heavy metal stuff. I like, don't get me wrong, I like, heavy music, but not super heavy stuff. Although in more recent, probably in the last year or so, I've probably been listening to more heavy stuff than I ever did. Bands like Meshuggah and so on, which I would never listen to a few years back. But
I mean, you did a pretty good Slipknot.
Yeah. Well, that was all by accident. I mean, well, like it's surreal to me, and obviously I'm super stoked that a player like Jim, played through the amp and wanted to keep it. So he when they were in Melbourne. And this was through my good buddy Mike Smith at Omega Amps, who's the guitar tech for Mick Thompson. So Mike reached out to me the week that they were coming for Knotfest, back in March of this year, and said, hey, man, I'm going to be in Melbourne with the band. We should catch up. And we did. And then the very morning that I was going to go in and meet with Mike, and also Bob Strakel came along. Bob is a front of house engineer for Slipknot and for Avenged Sevenfold. Caught up with the guys for a few beers and so on over lunch. Mike, this is on the Wednesday before the gig. The gig was on the Friday, and Mike says to me before I jump in the car to come in, he goes, have you got an Alta there that you can bring in? And I'm like, well, yeah. Why? He goes, Jim wants to try it out. I was like, are you serious? So yeah,
why buy a Marshall when you can actually buy a real amp?
Yeah. It kind of happened very quickly, and it's funny how these things work out. So that was actually my amp. So I had a bunch. Well, I had two others here that I could have taken in, but they were already sold, and I had to pack them and ship them. So I took my one, and thinking that he might try it out, and then I'd come and collect it the next day or whatever. He ended up putting it in his rig and taking it. So yeah, look, favorite modern band, I don't know, man. Just as I said, probably Channel 2 based around the older stuff, and then it grew from there. Question here, Murray Guitar Pickup says, Billy Corgan used a 2204, Jason, with KT66 as output valves. What's the advantage of doing this? Headroom. Yeah. Interesting question. So it definitely, you'll get a different sound. So I always, yeah.
It's like very, there's not much like in terms of like the characteristics are a little bit different, but I know headroom, I know. I hate that word.
I don't think headroom's the one. So one of the things about, so KT66s, and Alex, you probably know more about this than I do, but I'm going to have a stab. They would actually, like a pair of KT66s would be more comfortable with a different primary impedance than a set of EL34s. Right? So typically with the KT66s, you'd probably want a primary around 6K6 or somewhere around there. And with a pair of EL34s, you're probably, 3.8K or something like that, 3.6 maybe. Yeah. So when you throw a pair of KT66s in, and stuck to a 50-watt Plexi OT that has a 3K6 primary, then they will work, but they're not working at their kind of engineered optimal operating point. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that anything bad's going to happen, but it just means that they will kind of probably sound a bit different. And I do know I got a buddy, Jeremy, at Ground Zero Amps in the US, who has been on this great amp building journey with us, and he favors KT66s in his amp, even though he's using a stock, well, let's call it a stock, but a standard 100-watt Marshall OT with a 1.8K primary, and he just likes the sound of them.
The KT66s are more like the 6B6s, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I want to just put in the KT77s.
Yeah. I've got to bring this up. I'm sorry for our friends in Perth. It's about the coffee. Anyone who's been on the stream for a while will know there's a lot now. A coffee feud that is brewing between Leon, Todd, and Troy.
Yeah, definitely brewing.
Yeah, correct. That was accidental. Doesn't matter how good your coffee is, if the place has shitty water full of gunk blowing in from the Western Desert, it's not going to help you. Yeah,
that's Sydney. Sydney's got the bad water. Ours is all right. We're always flooded.
Hey, Lyle says hello, man. Alex, good on you, mate. Lyle, I hope you were listening when we again gave you props for your Marshall grounding video. One of our favorites, man. Here's something that you could do, Alex, and I'd be happy to put it on my YouTube channel if you wanted. Get a bunch of output transformers. Video. That would be cool. I'm not aware of a good one that's around. If anyone knows, put it in the chat. I'll be interested to have a look. But I'm not aware of kind of like a really super objective ABCD comparison of the exact same amp and rewire the output transformer and change it every time and record it. That would be super cool. I guess I could do it. It'd take a bit of work though.
Yeah, I can wind up a couple.
Well, we could do, we could do one like I've got a Haber here. I could get a Mercury, get one of yours, get a Drake or something like that. Sit there with a soldering iron, pull it out, change it over. I mean, people have done this with pickups before, right? Why not do it with a?
I think Dave Friedman switches between his output transformers as well. I think he's done it a couple of times.
You got to do it in the same amp, though, right? That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, you can put it. You could
same
have
voltages, same negative feedback circuit.
I mean, I think to do this super objectively, you'd want to actually do it in the same amp. Like I could have 4 Alta 100s with all 4 different output transformers and put them on an amp switcher, but I don't think that's even though I think they are super consistent one to the next, I think people would still say, oh, it's not the same amp, blah, blah, blah. I know what people are like in YouTube comments. They like to poke holes. Black Cat Amplification says, Baltimore, Alex is such a good dude. Yeah, man. I completely agree. Low quality guitar videos, mods for softening newer Marshalls. So I would just say newer Marshalls rather than just Transformers. Yeah, Dave, definitely. Look, the thing is that the key thing there, and I've mentioned this on videos, right? If you look at any of my kind of mod videos and stuff, you hear me blab on about this stuff. You just want to kind of you can just roll off a little bit of top end. So a 470 picofarad cap placed strategically, particularly kind of late in the preamp, can be a really nice way of just kind of rolling off a little bit of top end, and in a brand new Marshall or whatever, right? You might find that kind of just softens it a little bit.
It's sort of like a recto box presence control sort of thing.
More like kind of like around the, you might just have a cap to ground around the treble pot, or off the cathode follower, or maybe at a plate snubber on the stage that's coupled to the cathode follower over the plate resistor.
Yeah, the 470 picofarad, yeah.
That kind of stuff, right? And it'll shave a bit of harshness off, and you'll see that your sash will see if you have a look at the schematic for the SLO.
Yeah,
all over the internet, and you have a look at
I've got it available on the site too.
Yeah, well, there's a massive 1 nanofarad plate snubber sitting over the top of one of the plate resistors through the preamp, and if you play with that circuit and take that in and out, you'll go, oh my god, without it, it's super bright and take your head off. So that kind of thing is what you can do to a newer Marshall to kind of soften it a bit.
Even changing that value too, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, Murray's destroyed a lot of great pickups in the name of research.
Same.
For sure, man.
In saying that, I hate pickup winds. Like the wire is so thin.
Have you wound pickups? I'm sure you have. You no doubt the answer. Yes. Yeah.
Look at my fingers. I've got like sausage fingers. Like every time I try and do the thing, it's like snap. I'm like, throw it away. So yeah, I've got to get a good winder for a pickup winder. I'm not going to do it.
I know who winds great pickups is Gary, our friend Gary. Under the handle on Facebook of Eddie Halen, if anyone is in the DIY groups and whatever and wonders who the hell Eddie is, it's Gary, and he's here in Melbourne, and there's nothing that Gary can't build. You name it, he'll do it. Insanely talented guy. Hey, it's Matt, isn't it? Hey man, how you doing? Over in NZ. Yeah, retired winders. Yeah, so there was a guy, Voller. Was it Paul Voller? A transformer winder here in Melbourne, who literally, his factory was 10 minutes drive from my house. And as soon as I discovered, Warwick Newman put me onto him. Now, remember, if anyone who watches these streams, this is number 6, right, of the Q&A. Woz came on for the first couple. And he pointed me to this guy. And so, yeah, I hooked up with Paul, and he wound some transformers for me. And they were awesome. And then he retired. So it's like, yeah, it's hard. I don't think anyone's doing it who's...
There is a couple of people, I don't know the name, his last name, in New Zealand anyway. Pete. No, last name's lost. But yeah, there is a couple of people, and you can especially find them if you look at Facebook groups with like transformer winding. You'll be able to find people in there, or even just like shouting out in one of those groups.
Yeah, you'll be surprised at who's. You'll be surprised at who's around you that can do the craft. Hey, we've got Mark here, man. Hey, how you doing?
Yo.
Great to see you in the stream, and thanks for reaching out this week, man. It's been good to chat. Yeah, anyone's got a busted OT, let us know. I'll put you in touch with Murray. get that done. Where else have we got here, guys? I'll just go through this chat. Yeah, Lyle says Simon. So this is Hoss is in the chat, right? Yeah, Simon's Sykes video was off the chart. Yeah. If anyone hasn't watched it, go and check it out on my channel, please, because it's just, I mean, you know,
the
like
acapella version.
Yeah, the isolated tracks version. You know, one of the things about getting to hang out with Simon that I discovered, and I kind of already, you know, I think everyone knows this, right? But it's nice to be reminded of it. Is like there's hundreds of people that play guitar that you know, or whatever, and then there's pro players, and there's this. The Grand Canyon separates all of us from
100%.
Oh man, like, dude, just yeah, it's just another. It's not even another level. It's like several levels. It's amazing.
Yeah, my old guitar teacher was one of those guys, like Isaac Moran. He played for like Chris Brown and Ricky Martin, all those guys whenever they come down. Like he does a lot of fusion, jazz, blues stuff. But yeah, I haven't even spoken to him for like, well, years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's cool.
Another level.
Yeah, look, it's you know, it's
we're the hobbits.
What did I say to Simon? I said it was equally my first experience of being in a studio with him. I said to him, "Gee, man, that was equally inspiring and depressing at the same time." So it's like, oh my God, that's like, yeah, but more inspiring. But you know, it was like, oh my God, yeah, that's what a pro is. Yeah, where are we at here, guys? Did Francis? So this is the Line 6 blog. Did you? Yeah. Was that the mod that you did for Francis?
Oh man, that thing. You know, everyone else was surprised I actually managed to like resurrect this thing. It was Francis himself, like I think he got a bad deal as well, and I think that's probably what made me drive to like get this thing into working order. The switching wasn't working. The DSP board wasn't working. There was hardly anything that was working, and when it was, it sounded like it sounded like cotton wool in your ears, shoved really, really deep in, and it was so disheartening just to see like someone paying money for this thing and yeah, it was the biggest hack job that I had to do to get this thing back to working order, especially with the switching and modifying the foot switch to work with like tap tempo. Actually, the foot switch itself, because as you're aware, the Bogners use that resistive sort of to change the voltage to switch, and it doesn't work well in amps like MIDI or something like that. Works brilliantly, but like changing a resistive load with I think it's like the Fenders might have done it back in the day. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I basically had to create a whole new loom tacked onto the DSP board to bypass everything, and then I had to just on one channel, the amount of crosses that I had on the schematic to remove components from this circuit was just like it was a lot of effort, and yeah.
I remember you when you were working on that, you would chat about it quite a lot, and you were. I think every second word in the chat was a swear word. Working on that,
yeah, and that was me controlling myself.
Yeah, so I think you got there in the end, but it was a challenging one. Lyle says that Silver Jubilee is one of the very best clean sounds of any Marshall. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and like, of course, everyone would, Murray Guitar Pickup says, that's a surprise to me. I never gave the Silver Jubilee much of a chance. I assumed it was more for high gain. Yeah, look,
that's baby gain.
It's not high gain for sure. It's, good sounding amp. I know, I mean, Shay talked about this. I'll jump to his comment now, right, actually. Shay talked about this when he was on the stream. Hey, dude, with Dave, and you said, Shay, the story that you told was you owned one of the original Jubilees back in the day, and you regretted selling it, but you said it was one of the best sounding amps you ever had. Yeah, so Steve Grindrod was part of the design process for the original Marshall Master Volumes in the 70s, which were rebranded as the 800 and then Silver Jubilee. Yeah. He would be an interesting guy to chat to, Steve. That would be super interesting. You and Lyle are on the same.
I just saw Lyle's comment. Our comments suck.
Which one?
Yeah. I think I skipped all the way down.
Oh, right. Sorry. But this is this one here, Lyle. So we were talking about the 4-stage plate fed design, I think. And you're saying, Lyle's saying you can use an LND 150 as a cathode follower. You've done this, Alex, right? Mm-hmm. You did this recently.
I found that the LND as a cathode follower, it only works well as an AC coupled cathode follower and not a DC coupled. Just the way the gain sort of is structured. It's almost like a swell of gain, and it's just too much and very digital sort of. It doesn't have that sort of like tube characteristic. I was. That was with the JCA 20 that I figured out that, it was. And I'm like, after actually creating this mishmash of whatever I did, I went and figured out like what I was actually designing, and it was actually very close to a AC coupled cathode follower.
Yeah, cool.
But without the gate, the AC coupling part. But I fixed that with a 470 from source to gate, and it was the best way to do it don't do a DC cathode.
Yeah, interesting. Hey, did you talk about your experiments in your? So Alex admins a great group on Facebook. If you guys aren't on it, it's called the Modern Tube Amp Designer. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The modern tube amp builder.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't even know my own group.
Well, you very kindly made me an admin of it this week as well. So I will study up on the right name as well. Did you post any information about your findings there on the LND cathode follower in that group?
Well,
still playing with it?
Aware of, I think I did post something somewhere. I know I did post a few things like of what I used in the Jet City group, and one of the guys, I think, well, as you would know, Martin Kidd, he goes, "Oh, learned something new today," because he never thought to bias the L&D the same way. But yeah, like a lot of people that have looked at it, and some people go, "Oh, no, it's better to do it this way or that way," and I'm like, "Well, I did it this way and it works, so you know." But that way, I think I wanted to try I think Merlin Blanco did a similar to an AC coupling, but instead of connected directly to the gate, which one's the grid on an LD 150?
Yeah,
GS. Is it source? No.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember, man.
I'd have to look at it to even, But yeah, like he used I think like a 47 microfarad from a resistor mixer into the where you would put the tone stack or whatever. And I'm like, I might try that later on, but yeah. The first thing I tried was, the typical DC cathode follower with an L&D 150, and oh my god, I was almost tempted to just put a tube in there.
Yeah, well, this is it, right? I mean, if you do the hard yards on that and actually, strike on something that actually kind of sound and feels like a tube-driven cathode follower, then it's it'd be worth the time and effort, right?
Yeah, definitely. AC coupling.
Wayne says, "G'day, fellas. Due to there being no space in the chassis of my Victory Sheriff, those kind of like lunchboxy style amps, right? I'm thinking of trading it for a Laney AOR 50. I had one of those amps, man. JCM 800 DNA, yes, absolutely. Now there were, if memory serves me correct, there were two. There was the Pro Lead AOR, and then there was just a normal one, I think. So, I think the Pro one had kind of like an 800 with an extra gain stage. So this is all kind of a bit sketchy. I'll need to have a relook at it, but yeah, they are like that would be kind of a 2204. Is my guess.
Laney stuff's great.
Yeah, that sounded great, man. I had a Laney 4x12 and a head back then. It was the best sounding cab. I actually rehoused those speakers one day because the cab started to fall apart. I had it for years. I rehoused it in a different quad, and it just didn't sound anywhere near as good. People are asking about bands that inspired me. Rob's saying 5 bands or musicians you have on CD. Well, I got a big plastic bin full of CDs that I don't listen to anymore. But
you have CDs now.
No. Well, I got a whole lot. No, I don't use Spotify. I use Tidal.
Oh, do you? Yeah, Tidal's okay.
Tidal's cool. It's all lossless, man. And like most of the stuff on Tidal now is like, it's all flat. It's like 96 kilohertz, 48-bit, and so on. But in this corner, if anyone who's like really might kind of notice changes in my amp room here, right in the corner here, there used to be a shelf full of amps, and that's now in the garage. And what's there is a turntable. And I've got so my son Jackson has got right into vinyl. So between the two of us, we're starting to build up and kind of reestablish a collection. I've actually got because we're tube amp nuts, right? In the bottom of that rack, I've got two quad 240s. So the brand Hi-Fi Quad, English, I think they're English company, which I picked up secondhand, probably 5 years ago. And they were in pretty much mint condition. The KT88, the two monoblocks, KT88 hi-fi amps, just awesome. Just the freaking best thing I ever bought. Just so good. So having fun with vinyl. But what are the five? So I'll tell you about the 5 albums that I went and bought first off, right? Maybe because on any given day I'll give you a different answer. I bought Steven Wilson's new album. Anyone check out Steven Wilson? I came to discover, I was kind of aware of him through the Porcupine Tree stuff that he did, but because he had Guthrie Govan play on a couple of albums, I kind of got into his stuff. So I've been listening to his new album. It's just come out, I don't know, a month ago or something. Got that on vinyl. It's awesome. I got some old Radiohead stuff. I bought Soundgarden, Super Unknown. I bought Alice in Chains, Dirt. I bought Def Leppard, High and Dry. What else did I get? I got latest Meshuggah. I don't know. I just like any given day it'll be a different answer. Oh yeah, and I bought out my old Van Halen. A friend of mine who gifted me 4 Van Halen albums. Some you might have seen it on my wall, right? Anyone who watches my videos will see that occasionally there's a shot of Van Halen 1, 2, Women and Children First, Fair Warning album covers framed up. My good mate Hilton gifted me those albums framed up for my 50th birthday. So I very carefully, when I got the turntable, very carefully removed those. They're all original pressings. And I've been playing those on vinyl. So that's, there you go. All good fun. Well, hey, PF says, thank you, Jason, for the answer on the fixed bias information. So you've already done it. Man, that's amazing. Real time, 62.5% on the Marshall. Yeah, that's cool. You're probably pretty happy there, actually.
Yeah, that's a happy medium on Marshalls.
It's a new amp nerd hero. Well, that's cool. I'm glad. But I can't believe you did this in real time on the stream. That's so awesome. That's putting information into good use straight away. Okay, we have a super chat. Stormlight Architect. Thank you, man. It helps pay the StreamYard bill. So appreciate it. Says, you modded a Seriatone a few years back. Sounded exactly like the sound I've been hunting for. Turned into a Friedman small box. Oh, yeah. God, did that one. Coming from high gain. I'm coming from high gain. My Origin 50 Synergy B Deluxe 5153s isn't getting there. Mark 5 is the closest. Yeah, like, gee, if it's the amp I'm thinking of, it was a 50 watt. It was Nick's 1987 50 watt Marshall circuit, or amp that he has, Nick at Seriatone. And gee, I was only just getting into kind of figuring out how to pull apart preamps and reassemble them into different circuits and mods and so on. And there's a dude in Sydney that reached out to me and wanted to send me his Seriatone and do that mod on it. I think it was the first paid mod that I ever did. Someone actually paid me some money to do a mod. So I'm glad you liked it. I think that's the one that you're talking about. It was very, very early video on my channel, like when you go back to kind of like, you know how people start YouTube videos and they don't even show their face or they hardly talk or whatever? It's kind of probably one of those style videos.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing the robot voice for today.
Yeah, right. Yeah, an awesome story about Jim Root. Yeah, that was a pretty special week, that one. I can't wait for the next time they come out. Would have to get Dave to show you how to build a tranny switcher. Yeah, okay, man, that would be the one to do it. So the way to do the A/B test on the output transformer is we could wire up a switcher, Alex. Maybe
Simples.
You know, yeah, it's not hard at all.
Or you can just take out the HT fuse.
Yeah, that's right. That's not. Yeah, that's probably the easy way to do it, actually. Yeah, Lyle. So this is back to the thing. You have to have the transformer be the only variable and rebias it the same way. Yeah, it's spot on, man. Yeah, I'm sure John did. Right. So Frank says, I recall Pete Thorne mentioning John Sir did transformer comparison developing the PT100. I'm sure they did the same thing with the PT15 as well.
Hopefully, he didn't use red wire.
Well, I rectified that problem this morning, Alex, before I came onto the stream. And the very last thing I did before I came on here and we started chatting before we went on air was I fired up the amp and put the output on the scope and was very, very pleased to see a beautiful symmetrical sine wave. Just in the, punching a sine wave into the return of my loop. Just to test the power amp. So yeah, be careful with the colors. Not everything is.
At least they didn't wire it up incorrectly inside the bobbin.
Oh man,
that would be an absolute pain in the ass to undo.
That would be. So Black Cat's amplification says Alex told me about a few minor mods that you did to a Soldano SLO clone that really made his latest SLO build, so that'd be your Black Cat's latest SLO build, sound fantastic. Took some of the harshness out without discoloring the signature sound. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I've got a...
Or anything you're prepared to share? You don't have to share. It's okay.
Yeah, I pretty much share everything.
I know you do. You're very generous like that.
So one of them is the voltage divider. Instead of using the 1 meg, basically halve that, like 560k. What's that? Just after the second gain stage, I think. You've got the 470 with 1 meg, and then the other stage is the 220 with the 330k.
Yeah, 100%.
So dropping that to 560, increasing the negative feedback to 82k, dropping the cold clipper to like 22k, or even probably even go to 15k even, and the V1 plate to 150k or 180k. It just gets rid of all that fizz. It basically makes it into a Marshall.
Yeah. That's what I've heard Dave talk about, that, right? Marshalize the SLO. Certainly you can marshalize the crunch channel into something very reminiscent of a 2203. I actually have tried that.
Mine's my overdrive channel sounds very much, you drop it down to like 4, but yeah, that's apart from being a little bit more bassy, I guess, or warm on the overdrive channel, it's very much the same as the crunch.
Yeah, that's cool. Just going through here, like Lyle says, yeah, alchemists suck. There's no hate to me, Alex. I think you guys have got some maybe shared experience on that one. Low quality guitar video says off topic. Well, it's on topic, right? We're talking about amps here. Since Lyle and Jason are very familiar with this is the Origin 20. Can the Origin 20 benefit from a warmer bias, or is that not really in the cards? So looking on the chat, Lyle was right on the money here, right? Yeah, you could do that, but you're going to be those tubes will be drawing a lot more current at idle, and you doubt whether the PT could handle it. And they is what they is, man.
Try it.
Yeah, you should try it, right? What's the worst that's going to happen? You'll blow up.
The worst thing is you're giving someone else some work.
Yeah. Here we go. Tim Tiernan says, since Jason, where did this come from? So Jason H in the DIY group always comes in with a comment and says Alex is the man.
Every single post I did was like, you're the man. And for a while I was like, man, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't like people doing this to me, but after a while I just have to laugh, because he's like when it comes to like commenting on a post, he'll do it without fail. Like he's religious that way.
Yeah, no, he's good. He's I think he means well, mate. He's just
I don't take anything to heart these days.
Having a bit of fun. Yeah, Dixie Devil says, so this is a Laney AOR Series 2's 8 knob with extra gain stage on a push-pull pot. Yeah, so that's not the one I had. I'm pretty sure my memory of that, it was a good old 6 knob, preamp master volume Marshall 2204. I did 50 watts, so it'd be 2204. What else we got here, guys? Getting towards the end of the chat here, which is cool. And then we're going to talk about José for a little bit. And then we'll be well past the 2-hour mark, so we're probably time to go and do some work. Given if anyone doesn't know, it's 1 p.m. in the afternoon here on Friday.
I did tell my boss though, like that I may or may not have been online.
You had some other important business to attend to, probably.
I just told him I may not be online. So if anyone finds out, I'll be somewhere else.
Oh, this was pre-recorded. Yeah.
Yep.
KXM Rock says 50. Oh my God, you're an old geezer, I guess is what you're saying. Yeah, man. I reckon 53 now. So 50 seem like I'd be happy to be 50.
But you still have less grey hair than I do, so.
I tell you what, it's changing every day at the moment, and it's certainly not getting darker. It's getting more and more grey. Wayne says, excuse me, if you haven't yet, check out Meshuggah's Destroy, Erase, Improve. Yeah, I've got right into all their stuff. Like, this was one of those bands, and I guess a genre that I could never listen to because I just couldn't stand the vocals. I just couldn't get past it. And I had this kind of like every time, because I got a good mate of mine who plays drums here, Shane, was like, he's always like, you got to get in, mate, Meshuggah, And just every time I listened to them, I just couldn't do it. And I don't know. I think because I've become a bit of a Slipknot fan for obvious reasons, it was a bit of a gateway drug for being able to handle Meshuggah.
And Corey's a brilliant singer as well.
Yeah, well, this is the thing that I discovered with that, because I was aware of them and I'd listened to a bit of their stuff, but I wouldn't say I was a massive student of Slipknot, but I am now. And he's an amazing singer. And just like so clever how they kind of mix that, kind of really, the really angry stuff with the super melodic stuff as well. Whereas there's not a lot of vocal melody in Meshuggah, but the instrumentation makes up for it.
Yeah, the orchestra of 200 people on stage.
Yeah,
That's slight exaggeration, obviously.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're at the 2-hour mark and we're at the end of the chat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to attempt to give you a listen to what this amp sounds like that I've been working on. And I'll just talk a little bit about where it came from. I mentioned this amp when Dave was on 2 weeks ago. And for any of the Aussies that are in the chat, you guys will know of a builder and modder that, you know, paved the way, I think, for many Australian companies, a guy called Dave Olbrich. And the amp that I've got here, which is a first, I'm looking over here because it's sitting on my shelf, is it's a late 90s 50-watt reissue, 1987X. And it was modded by Dave. And then I understand subsequently tinkered with by a number of other techs as well. I don't know who, but certainly originally modded by Dave Olbrich to be essentially a copy of a real José modded Marshall that Erwin Thomas, or Jack Jones as he goes by, brought back to Australia from LA. And I mentioned this to Dave because Dave knows Erwin really well when Erwin was based in LA, and I think did some work for him on his amps. And Dave actually mentioned that he thought that the amp that Erwin brought back to Australia might have actually been modded by John Suhr rather than José. And we talked about how, well, if I could ever get to that amp, I know who actually owns it now. Erwin Thomas doesn't own it. He on-sold it. But this 50 watt here was supposedly a copy of that. But when I got it, and it's, you know, I'll finish the work on it and it's going to be returned back to the owner after the weekend. But when I got it, I just don't think it wasn't the classic José mod. And when we say José mod, right, everyone probably thinks one thing and maybe others think other things. There are clearly different versions.
330K.
Well, this is the classic, and I mentioned it before, right? This is the kind of like the classic just gain stage in front. And that was the mod that was done. So this has had an extra preamp tube drilled into it. And anyone's tried to do that in a 50 watt Marshall chassis will know there's not a lot of room for that stuff. There's no diodes in this amp, and it's got a traditional master volume. But to finish the stream off, I'm gonna try and just play really, really quickly through it, and then I just want to talk to you guys about. I've actually drew up the schematic this morning, and I'm going to screen share that and pass on that bit of information. If anyone likes the sound of this amp, you can take what I've done and maybe have a play with it. So just give me 2 seconds here because I need to turn off. We tested this with Alex, right? I need to turn off the echo cancellation, which I'm going to do right now.
I can definitely hear it.
So that, let me just get all these options back on here. Just changing my audio setup, guys. All right, we're back. So that was a quick demo of that amp. And the thing that, a little brown. Yeah, well, Okay, let's have a look at this. Can hear it great. That's cool. Sounds great. Good. Sounds killer. Love to hear it. Oh, this is the sound in my head, Lyle. I'm sorry, man. So one of the things that I discovered with this tweaking this amp, right? Because the José mod, as I said, was kind of already in on this thing, but I just couldn't bond with it. I was like, this thing just doesn't sound great. Sounds okay, but I just knew it could sound better. And I'm going to stack up. I'm going to flash up the schematic, right, and share screen, because I'll show you just the preamp, how I've kind of did the preamp. And, I didn't invent this or anything, right? This is just an optimized José mod, but I just want to talk about kind of the values that I ended up with. Happy to pass on the info. And as I said, I will do a kind of more in-depth video on this amp, I think, because it was cool. Yeah, it was a cool one to work on. And the one thing, though, before I just bring that up, I will talk about the presence cap. And I had kind of did all my regular stuff on the front end of this amp and was thinking, it sounded pretty good. It's okay. But I was like, I keep coming back to it and go, it's just not, still not quite there. And I'd overlooked the presence cap. This thing had a pretty sure stock 0.68 presence cap, which Marshall did a lot of, but the classic the classic Marshall is the 0.1, right? 0.1 microfarad presence.
80 nanofarad, that's huge.
Yeah, and the 0.68, right? If anyone's got a Marshall, then you don't have to be a tech or anything, right? But if you're curious enough and you're prepared to go and have a look, at. You can normally see it. It's printed on the cap. All right, 0.68. It really, to me anyway, it hollows out too much of the mid range, and really kind of takes a bit of that. I mean, I've heard Dave talk about this, right? Or maybe I have chatted with Dave about it. Dave Freeman would often describe this as almost like a faux depth circuit, where the 0.68 presence is carving so much of the mid range and top end out via the negative feedback line that you're getting more bottom end in the amp, or like you'd get from a depth circuit. But it has a funny sound to it. Some people do like it. I mean, I've had a bunch of people, contact me and say, "Oh man, you should put a 0.68 presence cap. They rock." I
didn't like it.
Well, yeah, I've figured out this week I'm no longer sitting on the fence on that one. I am 100% do not like 0.68 presence caps in Marshalls. So, just to finish off the stream here, guys, here's my little really quick hand-drawn scheme. It's the only live stream on the internet that looks at schematics like this, I bet. So this is the José gain stage, right? The thing, you look at if anyone knows how to read these things, you know that, here's my pointer here, hopefully that's coming through.
2 and 2.
Yeah, this is the first gain stage here, right? This is the José mod. So when you think about a José mod, gain stage in front of a plexi, that's the basic thing, right? Then you had other things like, moving the position of the master volume, pre-tone stack, putting diode clipping in, blah, blah, blah. But the essence of that José mod is this gain stage. I just saw that comment from Jay.
My wife told me not to.
Putting that gain stage out in front of the plexi. Now, here's the thing, right? This is kind of the formula, and then as I said, I'm not sitting here for 1 second trying to claim that, hey, I invented this or whatever. That's not the case at all. But in terms of kind of tweaking and tuning, this is how I like it. 330K plate here, right? So often José would have two 100K resistors in series, so 200K plate resistor basically. But you can obviously play with this. I've got a video on plate resistors and how they work and how they will change the amount of gain that a triode will develop. This was done a little bit by feel in this amp. I started with 220 in here and then moved it to 330 because I just felt it needed a little bit more compression under the fingers. Obviously, standard Marshall 2K 7.68 on the cathode. I always go lean. And again, José would do this, right? Always go pretty lean in the early couplers, so 0.0022. Now, this is the 1 meg pot here. This is the José gain stage, right? So when you look at a José mod, you'll often see an extra gain pot. It's on the front of the amp, and it would often be sat in one of the holes, right? So if it's a 4-hole Marshall, one of them will be sacrificed where there's an extra pot there. So this pot here is adjusting the level of gain that's coming from this extra stage out in front. This 1 nanofarad to ground here is key for getting this sound, right? You can play with the circuit and not have that cap there, and you can maybe compensate for it in other ways. What that's doing, guys, right, is basically dumping some high end to ground. Mm-hmm. And it rolls off a bit of gain because it's like 1 nanofarad we're dumping a reasonable amount. And you can tune your amp by playing with this value. This amp had a 2.2 nanofarad or 0.0022 in it when I got it. So when I talked about the Dave Olbrich kind of following the José amp that he had when he did this mod originally, or maybe it was subsequently modded by another tech, I don't know, but it had a 2.2 nanofarad and it was just dumping too much for me. Yeah. So, but this is key, right? If you don't have this in here, or you don't put this in here, you might find that the amp is too bright, and then you'll be looking to kind of compensate for it in other ways. Now, then we would go, so the 68K, again, normally in the José, right, this would be 68K and 68K. Mm-hmm. These two here. This is just reusing. So if you go and have a look at a 1959 Super Lead circuit, then you will see the 68K resistors wired up to the high and low inputs, right? So with the José mod, you put that extra gain stage in, and then you feed it into where the guitar input would have otherwise been. I played with this 82K here to ground. This is probably the other piece of the puzzle here that is worth mentioning. You can change. So this was 68K, but then when you have the 1 meg pot in front of it, I just found it's a little bit too lean. Yeah. Yeah. You can play with this value here, right? This 82K, you move it up to 100, 120, 220, whatever. It'll dramatically change.
It'll get noisier, right?
Well, you get a lot more bass, right? And it'll dramatically change. So anyone who's got a modded amp and it has a feel switch on it, or a feel pot or something like that, and I know there's some, quite well-known modders that have kind of feel switches and so on, more often than not, it's actually changing this kind of setup here, that resistor to the ground. So I went with 82K because it just landed there. I had 120 there originally, or 68K originally, then I went to 120 and I brought it back to 82. And, conveniently, when you put that in parallel with that 1 meg pot, it's about 68K actually. And the rest of it, then we're into this second gain stage here is just the standard, we're into a standard plexi now pretty much, right? So 33K grid stopper is there. I'm going to add that because there wasn't one. And then we're into stock Marshall. So the other things I did, right? So this is to the treble channel. After that second gain stage, we're obviously we're into the treble channel volume pot in the plexi. And then after that, into the 470K, 470 picofarad mixer resistors, stock Marshall, right? I did add a 0.68 microfarad bypass on the 820 ohm cathode, which is the gain stage that's coupled to the cathode follower.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Yeah,
it makes it so much better.
nice, right? Gives it a nice sizzle. And we talked about, I bleated on, already read about the Presence Cap, right? This is, for me, that was like a sealer. I just sealed the deal. And then obviously with the José mod, right, you introduce the master volume. So, when you're modding a Plexi, it's a non-master volume amp. And when you put the gain stage out in front, then your regular volume becomes effectively a preamp gain pot, and then you have an additional master volume. So this amp just had the standard 1 meg audio taper master volume sitting in between the treble wiper and the phase inverter input. So yeah, I'll do a video on this, guys. I've got to complete getting the footage together, and then it normally takes me weeks to get around to editing them. I'm pretty lazy when it comes to that stuff. So
too much. It's too much involved in it.
Anyone
that edits the videos, man, kudos.
It takes forever, man. Yes, well, I did. So that 1 nanofarad Andrew, I played. Obviously, it came with the 2.2 nanofarad when I grabbed the amp. I put in the 1 nanofarad and played with that for a while. Dropped it down to 560 picofarad. And then I don't think I tried 680. I brought it back up to 1 nanofarad and settled there. Was happy with it. Yeah, Rob. So this is the thing, right? I mean, Dave's played with this. That resistor to ground that I was talking about after that first stage. Huge opportunity for influencing the tone and feel of your amp there, and it's something that you can do. If you're modding.
Yeah.
Or designing, great place to focus.
Just to even change the way the mids feel.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, guys. Hey, Alex, thanks for coming on, man. I know
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was awesome. I know we only probably chatted. Was it yesterday? I said, hey, man, you should come on. So these things are always good last minute. Much better than being too planned. I hope everyone has the rest of their day. It's probably getting quite late in the US now for all the guys that are tuned in from there, or if you're in Europe, it's probably, must be past midnight. Happy Friday if you're down under, and we'll see you all next week.